Well, before I introduce our last storyteller, I'd like to thank all of our storytellers. Erin Frederick and Roberta Albert in the Alumni Affairs Office. The Reunion Moth Committee who selected the stories. And our violinist, Megan Weeder. And our director, Jennifer. Stand up. And now, our final storyteller, Colby Devitt, class of '86.
My sophomore year at Barnard, I decided to major in classics. I wanted to study something that I liked, that was challenging, and also something that was specifically not utilitarian. I figured that college was a good time for pursuing knowledge for its own sake, and cracking open a book of Latin elegiac poetry or reading the Iliad in ancient Greek amply satisfied these criteria. I was often asked by people, particularly people outside the understanding Barnard community, "Yeah, but what are you going to do with your degree once you graduate?" I had no idea. Fortunately, the utility of my academic choice wasn't questioned by my parents or professors, who basically instilled in me the idea that what's most important is to pursue something with passion and to strive for excellence. I did have a backup plan, which was theater. I figured that if classics didn't work out, theater would be a nice, stable profession to fall back on. So I actively pursued that also while I was at college. And it was my college advisor, the classics professor, Helena Foley, who told me about a little used grant awarded to an undergraduate to direct a play. A grant to direct a play? I was amazed. What she told me was that the recipient of the grant would have her play staged in the Minor Latham Playhouse. Plus, she said, there would be people coming from as far away as New England to view the performances. Wow, a funded play in a great theater and a ready audience? What more could I ask for? I couldn't understand why this grant was hardly ever used. There is one small condition of the fund, Professor Foley said. No problem, I thought. Bring it on. The play, she said, must be staged entirely in ancient Greek. Oh, yeah. Suddenly it became crystal clear why this grant was hardly ever used. I mean, how was I going to find enough people who could act and were willing to memorize their lines in ancient Greek? And let's be honest here, who was really going to come see this play? I mean, I was a classics major, and I couldn't imagine myself attending a play staged entirely in ancient Greek. You should apply, she said. You can take it as an independent study and get course credit for translating the play. Well, ultimately, the lure of putting on a funded play in the Minor Latham Playhouse proved irresistible, and I applied, telling myself I'd figure out that Greek thing later. Now, maybe it was the quality of my stellar application, or maybe it was the fact that I was the only student that year to apply, but the fates smiled on me and I was awarded the grant. So, 20 years before Mel Gibson made productions in ancient languages hip and lucrative, I set my sights on directing an entire play in ancient Greek. I chose the Trojan women because the play has a lot of female roles, which I figured would make it easier to cast at a women's college. I was practical. And also because I really liked the chorus scenes, and I was hoping to make my directorial mark in the chorus scenes. Fortunately, Professor Foley extended her independent study offer to any other Barnard undergraduate who wanted to participate in the play, and that meant that I did have enough able, willing, and talented bodies to fill the cast. I had great expectations. I imagined that the chorus, with the benefit of my choreography, would command the stage and fill the audience with paroxysms of emotion that would transcend the fact that they couldn't really understand a word of what was being spoken on the stage. Using my exorbitant budget, which I think was $1,200, which was definitely $1,200 more than I'd ever had to direct a play before, I imagined that I could commission someone to compose an original score, and then another person to create a stellar set a la the caliber of the Met, and another person to create an amazing lighting design. Well, we got down to work, and the months went by in a blur of ceaseless activity. I was promptly informed by the graduate student in Columbia in musicology that I enlisted to do the score that there wasn't enough time to compose anything original, and we would have to choose from already composed compositions. My hopes of becoming the next Twyla Tharp were quickly dashed when I realized that merely getting the chorus to speak and move in unison was going to be a Herculean feat. The technical aspects of working in a theater for the first time, the stage management, the lighting, the set design, all proved to be more time-consuming and challenging than I had anticipated. And on top of all this, the task of eliciting moving performances from actors in a well-paced production, again in ancient Greek, was proving to be impossible. I mean, how was I ever going to pull this off, I thought? What kind of useless and foolish activity had I gotten myself into? Why hadn't I majored in English? I wanted to quit, but I was far too embroiled in this fiasco to back out now. I felt as doomed as the Trojan women. The afternoon of opening night, we had our dress rehearsal. The sound system in the lighting booth broke, which meant that the person in charge of the lighting couldn't communicate for her cues with the people backstage. And that meant she had to take her cues from the actors saying their lines on stage. Now, that would have been fine, except that she wasn't a classics major and she couldn't understand a word of what was being spoken on the stage. The rehearsal, as you can imagine, was a disaster. I had a Hecuba moaning in the dark. The chorus, in an attempt to follow this wandering spotlight around the stage, tripped over themselves and fumbled their lines. That night, I sat in the audience, biting my nails, praying that lines would stay memorized, movements executed, technical disasters be averted. To tell you the truth, I don't remember much of what happened during that performance. I do remember there was one student in the audience snoring loudly. But I also remember that there really were people who came from as far away as New England, and they sat in the audience with text on their laps, following along with the lines of the play, with eagerness and enthusiasm. I also remember most of the faculty of both the Barnard and Columbia classics departments attending. But mostly, I remember being enormously proud and relieved that my cast and crew pulled it off admirably. Directing the Trojan women in ancient Greek wouldn't be the last of daunting challenges I would take on in my life. Years later, while attending an art and technology conference, I fell in love with multimedia software, technology, and computers. I found myself surrounded by groups of mostly men speaking in technological parlance I didn't understand. Well, this couldn't possibly be harder to understand than Euripides, I thought. And I was right. A while later, I embarked on another improbable endeavor, which was to start my own internet software company. My partner and I started the company at the end of 1999, and no sooner were we up and running than we had to weather the dot-com crash and its aftermath. But with the resilience of an ancient Greek theater troupe, our company is still thriving. The internet, as we know it today, did not exist when I graduated from college in 1986. There is no utilitarian degree that I could have earned that would have prepared me for being the software entrepreneur I am today. In the fast-paced world of technology, what is useful information today may become useless tomorrow. And the important ingredient for success is to have the ability and passion to keep learning new things. This is what Barnard taught me. It provided a nurturing environment in which I could pursue my passions, however quirky they might have been, and it provided me with the skills and confidence to keep learning new things. Today, when I look into the faces of job applicants, I find that I'm still looking for the same qualities of drive, passion, and enthusiasm I had as priorities when I cast my Trojan women. Thank you.
Well, as Euripides himself used to say, I should say, there's no business like show business. And as he would say if he lived in these times, there's no place like Barnard. So thank you again to all our storytellers. Thank you again to Jennifer for bringing the moth to our reunion. And thank you all for becoming part of these stories. Enjoy the rest of reunion.